everyone. I have decided to do a K-pop tag video that was started by Sana Storia, and it is the K-pop albums that define me tag. This was really hard for me because I am truly multi-fandom, so I do stan a lot of groups, or at least I support a lot of groups. So I don't know. It was kind of interesting trying to figure out what I was going to pick out. But what I decided to do is I will start with some of my beginnings, the maybe the albums that define my beginnings, but more so I'm really gonna go into a kind of like a chronological timeline from when I first got into K-pop in 2012 to now. And a lot of the albums that you see here, what's kind of different about my collection is that I only started heavily collecting about a year ago. So I don't have a whole lot of albums from 2012 to 2016. I have very few of them actually. So you won't really see that. There's only a few here in this little area. But I wanted to kind of share with you my K-pop journey. And it did start in 2012. My niece made a playlist for me at my request. And the albums and songs and groups, I guess, that were the very start for me. One was Big Bang. This is actually a concert CD, but their Alive album, I had Blue and Fantastic Baby on repeat for so long. So this is forever like one of my original favorites, and I would say this is really the beginning of my love of K-pop was starting with these groups. So Big Bang is one of them, and so is Shiny. And this, again, I bought this just this year, but I want to let you know that Shiny was one of my first groups that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed this whole album, and I think at that time she put like Replay on the list, and that's forever one of my favorite songs. So Shiny is another one of my like beginnings, K-pop beginnings. Another group was UKISS, and UKISS is this is kind of a special group for me, only because I was fortunate when he was still with them. I was able to meet Kevin Wu when he was still in UKISS, and did this in a story in my last video. I did like a little fun story thing, and it just so happens that Kevin's cousin and I go to the same church, so I was able to meet him, and I had been a fan first, so it was kind of, I don't know, it was interesting, but it was just really fun meeting him just as a person, and to see how he interacted with his family and how family is important to him. And a lot of the UKISS songs really got me through some dark times. I just remember listening to them a lot when I was having like some of my more of the years that I was having going through like challenges. So they're a special group to me. Now Shinhwa was this, okay, so this album and this one too, actually, this is one of the very first albums I ever bought, but I think this is the first album I bought, and this is the 14th anniversary Shinhwa The Return. And the interesting about how this group, I discovered this group was I was trying to find groups that were closer to my age. I am an older fan, a much older fan. And even though Shinhwa, the members, they're still like 10 years younger than me. But at the time, I remember finding them because of Venus, and I really fell in love with the group. They've been together 20 years, and yeah, this year was their 20th anniversary. So I mean, to me, this group is legendary, and I feel like a lot of these groups strive to, last as long as Shinhwa's been around. So this was actually one of the first physical albums I bought. Another first physical K-pop. This is not an album though. It's a CD of Rain and his Asia tour in Japan. But Rain was one of the first solo artists that I started following early on, and I remember watching his K drama Full House and loved him in there. Again, I got into K-pop in 2012, so that was like after he'd already really become a Hallyu star. Um, but Rain is one of my favorite all-time male solo artists. I really, really love him. And I think it's kind of fun that I share well, my nickname is Rain, so I kind of share a name with him. But this is something that I did buy physically also. And another album that I bought physically was BAP No Mercy. Now, it's not this specific album that I would say defines me, but BAP was one of the first groups that I stand, and BAP was my first live concert that I attended in San Francisco, and they were just so great. I love BAP. I'm sad that they're just five now, but I truly believe the six of them will always be together. And I secretly am hoping that they will all eventually get away from, go towards what Jungkook is doing and be together again. Something kind of similar to what Highlight did. But yeah, this is one of the first albums I also bought too. Now, an album that I didn't buy until I think that last year or early this year. Tae Yang was another first like male solo artist that I fell in love with. When he, let's see, when I was introduced to Wedding Dress, oh my gosh, I felt like I could watch that video over and over again. So he's like one of my favorite artists like of all time, and for a long time actually, he was my ultimate bias. At first, he was just my bias in Big Bang, but he actually became my ultimate bias until he left for the military. And I will go into that story later on when I'm explaining some more of these albums. But yeah, I really do love Tae Yang, and I do love this album. The so that was kind of more defining what my beginnings were. I did want to include that a couple of groups that I listened to during 2012 that was on my playlist, and that I listened to very often was Beast and Infinite. So I don't have any of those albums from that time. But I decided just to kind of show you, like, they are a highlight now. But they are one of my favorite first groups that I stand. And same with Infinite. They are also another group that was on my playlist of 2012 that I listened to over and over again when I was really getting into K-pop. A couple of other groups that I wanted to mention were like Teen Top and M Black. Those were two groups that I listened to a lot at the time in 2012. But I don't really actually have any albums. I have one M Black album, but like I said, a lot of these albums were bought recently. So my this whole video with showing you albums is kind of a combination of what I started off with. That was like more of the things that I first showed you, and then everything else is stuff that I collected over the last year that describe my journey into K-pop. So continuing with my journey in 2014, 2015, I discovered the program Who Is Next, and that was the YG program where it was Team A versus Team B, which became Winner and Icon. And I loved that show, even though sometimes it's so heartbreaking to watch. They really go through a lot when they're doing their like pre-debut training and stuff like that. But I wanted to. This is also a DVD, so this is not an album, but it kind of represents both of those groups that I really got into at that time after watching Who Is Next. And interesting. When, let's see, one of the episodes, YG went to JYP to do, like kind of like a competition. And that's when I first were introduced to the members of Day 6 and GOT7. But I didn't get into GOT7 until I think it was like 2015. They debuted in 2014, but it wasn't until this album, Just Right, came out. I love this. It's still one of my favorite all-time GOT7 songs, and I was really fortunate that when they came to LA, they actually sang that song as part of their set list. And again, it was just so special because that's one of my favorite songs ever. But this album I bought, I think this was the first album I ever bought online. So I think I bought it through Amazon, and yeah, that was when I started slowly collecting, I guess, albums. And like I mentioned at that time, I was introduced to the members of Day 6 in that one episode. And Day 6, they debuted in 2015. And this is their first album, The Day. And I think this is still my favorite album because this is their album where they sing Congratulations, and I really love that song. So that was a couple of, these were like the groups that I kind of got into just by watching Who Is Next. It was started with Icon and Winner, but then it also like kind of gravitated and led to these two as well. Another two groups that, let me get the albums because they're not here. Another group that I started listening to in 2015 was BTS. So they had debuted in 2013, but I didn't actually start listening to them until, let's see, it was I Need You and Run. I loved those songs. Oh, and Butterfly. Love those songs. I'm just showing you this album because this is actually my favorite BTS album, and I feel like I'm really excited. I'm going to be seeing them on Wednesday, and they've just come so far. I'm really proud of them and their accomplishments. So BTS, again, this is another group that kind of like is in the middle of my journey. And then kind of an honorable mention from 2015. I only own one album by them. It's Monster X, but they were also another group that I was started heavily getting into at that time. So that was 2015. 2016, I feel like I took maybe a break, or I just wasn't really getting into a lot of new groups at that time. So it wasn't until last year in 2017 that I started getting into newer groups again. And the groups that I got into, let's see, are where are they? Oh, here they are. Okay. So in 2017, that is when EXO came out with KPOP. And this was like a fourth album repackage, The War. This is the first EXO album I ever bought. I did. EXO debuted in 2012. Yeah, 2012. I didn't really start getting into them until 2014, I think. I think that's when Roommate was on and Chanyeol was on Roommate, and that's when I started getting into it more. But last year was when I bought my very, very first EXO album, and I do love EXO. Lay is my is my bias, and he's not promoting with them right now. But so that makes me kind of sad. But I'm hoping to see him soon. So this is one of the albums I bought in 2017, and another group that I was introduced through a friend was B2B. So this was my first B2B album, Brotherhood Act. Phenomenal album. I love this group so much. They're also probably in my top 5. Along with, let's see, my friend, when she introduced me to B2B, she also really got into VIX. And I'm saving VIX for last, because I have a story for them. My journey with VIX is kind of very special. So, but yeah, but this was the album in 2017 where I really, really started standing B2B, and I realized that I was a fan of just when the groups are very talented, where the rappers can sing and the singers can rap. I love that. So they are one of my favorite groups. Let's see. Also in 2017, I don't have the albums out here. Well, I don't really have specific albums. But what I wanted to mention in 2017 was that that's when I started actually going to concerts. And GD was my first one. I was really happy to see him because I knew it was before he was going to enlist. That one and White Knight, Taeyang. That tour, I followed him from the very minute like it was announced. I remember being so excited because, again, Taeyang was an ultimate bias, and he's still one of my favorite all-time artists. So that was I would say that kind of sums up 2017. In late 2017, though, that is when Stray Kids had their show, and this is their pre-debut album mixtape, and this is, I still think, my favorite out of their releases. I mean, I like all of the albums that they've come out with, but this one is really special because I this is when I was following them like pre-debut, um, and they're also probably in my top five right now. So, yeah, this was late 2017. And then I would say early 2018, if I had to start with an album that, again, continues to define my journey, it would be Astro. Astro was the first concert of 2018 that I went to. So I bought this album at that concert when they were in San Francisco. And Astro is actually really like special for me because I met a lot of friends, new friends, through a group chat in Kakao Talk. And we all just became close and we still talk to each other to this day. You know, we have our own little, set up a separate group chat, and it's just, we talk to each other every day still. So this time, preparing for the concert and then just experiencing Astro with all of them, it's just one of my favorite times of my K-pop journey because it was the first time I made like several friends, I guess, through a concert. And Astro has become also one of my just my favorite groups. I really like them. Rocky is my bias in Astro. So that was early. That was, yeah, I think they had their concert in like February 1st of this year, 2018. And then through the friends that I met at the Astro concert, who I, still talk to today, and who have gotten me into some other groups that I don't know that I would have got into them if I had not met them. But the three that I can think of, three groups that I started to really, really like this year. One was NCT. They've been debuted for a while, but it wasn't until this year that I really actually started paying more attention to them. And I really do love NCT. I love how they're made up of subunits. It's kind of hard keeping track of all of them. But I also feel like they're always going to be around because of the concept of how it can be. It's basically an unlimited amount of members. But I think they're another, talented group that's come out of SM. Another group that one of my friends really got me into was SF9. And I remember seeing I think it was on their V Live, they did a special like concert to promote this album. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that group so much. So this is their album Mamma Mia. It's one of my favorite albums that I've bought this year, and just another favorite group that I have currently, and that I expect to, as I continue my journey, I expect that I will, continue to love them. Now, the one group that I absolutely am so glad that I got introduced to is Ace. And Ace has honestly become my number 2 group, I think. Yeah, my number 2 group. So I can't wait until they have a concert here in North America because I really want to see them live. But this is the first 5-member group that I have really just been obsessed with since Shiny and Big Bang. And I really think the 5 of them, they're all talented and they really, deserve a lot of success. And they are, again, like my number two group. So that, I'm gonna say, is that kind of rounds out my early 2018 groups that like I started to like stan more. And then when I think about, I guess, defining like my future of K-pop, I think of shows like Mix Nine, and I think of shows like The Unit and Produce 101. I did not watch, but all of the like groups that have come out, like the 101, and then also the other members of or participants that have kind of gone on, I've loved them all. So I want to show 101 because I do love this group a lot. I know they're not going to be together after this year, which is why I'm really glad that I was able to see them in concert and see them at KCON. But I am kind of excited about, what's to come after they go back to their agencies. So, which is why I'm kind of put this into the category of what do I see K-pop like in my future. I totally see myself watching more programs similar to the unit, especially actually. But from Produce 101, there's 101. There's Kim Dong Han, Jung Soo Woon, MXM. Love them all. But the one album that I want to say kind of like was a surprise for me that I totally loved when it came out was his second album, One. I think this album is great. It's one of my favorites. I have collected all of Samuel's Korean releases. I think he only has Korean releases, but yeah, he's one of my favorites. And then The Unit is a show that I really watched from start to finish, and I loved the whole premise of Idol rebooting, and I'm so excited that I was able to kind of see them, form from the very, very beginning. Now, my bias in UNB is Ujin, and so what I'm seeing after watching the unit, after loving the album, I have gotten into other groups like Big Flow, that's Ujin's group. UKISS I was already into, so so June is in UKISS, but like bands like Hotshot and Impact and I.M, all groups that I love now, and it was because of the unit that I discovered them. And I'm hoping that that's kind of what it's going to be like going forward, is that I'm going to discover new like talent through programs similar to this. And what I found that I loved about the unit was the individual groups, like UKISS, Hotshot, in fact. I wouldn't have really known about them if they had not been on the unit, and I'm really glad that I was able to like learn about them and just discover this talent that was out there. So that's what I kind of see my future of or defining the future of K-pop for me. And so I'm now gonna end with my ultimate group, which is actually, you know, my ultimate group actually is Vix LR. I love Leo and I love Ravi. Leo is my ultimate bias. But when I got into Vix last year, that was when Shangri-La came out, and honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan. I do love the album. I have the album, um, but I wasn't. You know, it just didn't do anything for me. Like some of the other albums that I listened to later on, like Error. Like this is my favorite Vix uh, song is Error. I love it. Vix has actually become the group that I end up purchasing everything that's a Korean release. So I do have all of Vix's Korean releases. I think I also have one Japanese release. I'm still waiting for one package because I want to do my Vix collection because that's the only group out of all the out of my like collection I have. I feel like that I have the entire like discography. But like I said, really my ultimate group is LR. And so I have Beautiful Liar. When I discovered this song, again, I got into Vix late. So I only started listening to Vix like end of 2017. And Beautiful Liar was one of those songs that I thought was just, I loved. I was like on repeat. Fell in love with the two of them. I started watching a lot of like variety shows that they were on, and yeah, they just sort of snuck out of nowhere. Where I was like, "Who are these two?" That like, one, they're kind of awkward, which I love, but they're just so talented. Their album Whisper was really good too. And the reason why I'm like kind of rounding off my whole like K-pop albums that define me, I want to kind of end with this the with Vix and the subunit, and then include their solo projects. This is Ravi's first album, great album, and Leo just came out with this in July. And if I didn't mention it, I think I mentioned it before, but Leo is my ultimate bias. It was Taeyang I was explaining before, but like when him and the other members went enlisted into the military, and he also got married, so I don't know what happened. I just sort of felt like, oh, I kind of need to like focus on like a new group, and that Vix just happened to be that group that I started listening to everything. I started watching different variety shows, and then I ultimately started collecting the whole collection of the Korean releases. So that will be a next video. Like I said, I'm just waiting for a package to come so that I can complete that. But yeah, so these are pretty much the albums that I feel define my journey, more so my journey. Like I showed you some of the first ones that I ever bought, but I kind of want to show you albums kind of like in a chronological order type of thing, so that you kind of knew how I got into it up to now. So, but yeah, that's my video. I really loved this tag. I really enjoy watching videos like this, and so I'm really glad that it was started. if you guys have any questions about my collection or if you want to see anything, you feel free to leave a comment and let me know. And like I said, stay tuned for my Vix collection because that will be my next one. So until then, I hope you guys are having a good day, and I'll see you guys soon.